You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell in North Carolina, and we are smack dab in the middle of our off-season interview series where we're interviewing people in the industry, out of the industry. Basically, the bottom line of the guest here is people you will find entertaining, and therefore we don't have to talk as much and bore you guys. But this week on the podcast, I am joined by some of the brain trust of the recently developed Themed Experience Television Network, which is an online network. Right now, please welcome to the podcast Patrick Kling, Rachel Nakamura, and Andy Garfield. Everybody, how's it going?
It's going good.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Part of the joys of Themed Experience TV is I discovered you guys kind of mid-pandemic, just like I think that was kind of how your show got developed, was mid-pandemic. And, you know, the kind of the backstory here is that TETV was kind of created by themed entertainment, themed experience creatives. And it's kind of, I don't want to use the old PBS lyric, like the show, the network for themed experience by themed experience. You know, for our audience who's listening, and Rachel, I'll start with you, kind of what is your background in the themed experience industry, and, you know, where might our audience have seen some of your work or experienced some of your work?
Yeah, so I've been producing, I was starting on producing a couple of the shows we had before we formed a big network of, you know, the many we have now. And I actually was more in the tech industry beforehand. So I had a lot of experience at big tech companies like Facebook, Instagram, Microsoft, and themed experience was something I thought was cool, but I didn't know how to turn that into a career or who to talk to about that. I had gone to a couple of the meetings, different TEA, Themed Entertainment Association meetings, and that's where I had met Patrick at one of them and talked to him about how I could get involved with volunteering with the show, because I thought it was a really great way to educate people in the themed entertainment industry who don't have access to the in-person.
Perfect. And Patrick, what about you?
Yeah, hey, I work in theme park design for Nickelodeon and Paramount Parks and Resorts, and I've been in the theme park business since I was 14 years old, or amusement business since I was 14 years old, working at a water park called Wild Rivers Water Park. That's been turned into a condo complex. Worked at Disneyland, volunteer with the TEA, worked with Nickelodeon as a project coordinator, worked with SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, working with a company called iTech Entertainment, and then back at Nickelodeon. Right now I do creative development with them. And so that's kind of like I've never done a 20-second version of my story, but that's a 20-second version of it. And now you could see my work in the American Dream complex in New Jersey, the Nickelodeon Universe Park. I was the field art director for that. I came on about 50% in schematic design, which means there's some sketchy drawings and they're figuring out the details, and took that from that point all the way to being the field art director, where I was out there every week for like 3 months, ensuring everything is the way we wanted it to be. So that's where you can see my work. Every color, every color choice, every this, every that was like I was approving and was out there working with them. There are other things in the world you can kind of see, but maybe I can't talk about it. But I don't mind to be like that elusive. But there's other things out there like SpongeBob SquarePants Adventure. Doesn't exist anymore, but if you have any of your audience members are from Texas, they would know Moody Gardens. I was a project coordinator for that experience. And so that's where they'd see some of my professional work creatively.
Got it. And of course, with the American Dream Project is the sculpture or statue, however you want to say, of the log from Ren and Snippy, which how you managed to get in a theme park in 2019, 2020, I have no idea, but we're going to go with it.
Yeah, I will say to their credit, that was Zane Yench was pushed for that inclusion of it. And then I carried forth the dream amongst value engineering that was attempting to happen. So I'm glad that it is in there. And then of course there is a gigantic log advertisement that I definitely pushed for to be included. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Log by Blammo, and I I hope to one day build the first log by Blammo log ride. We'll see if I can get that through our system.
I love it. And last but certainly not least, Andy, what about you?
I think that you and Zane would have paid for that log out of your own pocket if you had to.
Yes, exactly.
Hi, Andrew. It's nice to be here. I'm Andy Garfield. I mainly do music composition and production and sound design and sound effects editing and dialogue recording and mixing and things like that for themed entertainment. I guess I'm even 21 years later still best known for my music on Men in Black, Alien Attack at Universal Studios Orlando, despite the fact that I've done all kinds of things in between now and then. But it's still sort of my claim to fame. I've worked a lot in film and television. I started my career, I was studying music composition and film scoring at USC back in 1990. And no, I started at USC in 1992, just a couple of years after Buddy Baker started the film and television scoring program there at USC. And I went to him and I said, I want to do music for theme parks. And he was just like, you're in. So he'd never heard anybody say that before. But I grew up in Anaheim. So I was sort of like genetically predisposed to that, I guess. But so, yeah, I mean, where can you hear my work now besides Men in Black? Since this is a coaster podcast, I did do the music for the Gods of Egypt VR coaster at Lionsgate Park in China. I think that just opened last year, and others. So, yeah. And I've known Patrick now for 10 years or so. We met volunteering at the Thea Awards in 2011. Patrick, he always gets it wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. Time's an illusion. I can't get it wrong. Because I graduated in 2009, and I felt like I did it pretty recently after that. But Andy is definitely more knows the history.
Well, I always remember that because the night before the Theas, we were rehearsing, and that was the night of the Tohoku earthquake in Japan. So I never forget that. Anyway, so I do the music direction for the Thea Awards most of the time. So when do we have them now?
Yeah, of course.
And for those that don't know, that the Thea Awards are part of the TEA, the Themed Entertainment Association, that gives out. It's kind of like the Oscars for theme parks. So I'm actually a TEA division VP board member for the Eastern Division, heavily involved in it, and it's a great association to check out. It's very behind the scenes. So all the people in the industry that actually make all these attractions and experiences are at the TEA.
It's more like the Golden Globes because everybody is eating and drinking and gets really drunk and the points don't matter.
That's true.
But Patrick tweeted out right at the beginning of quarantine in March last year, who wants to do a web show about themed entertainment to sort of like cheer everybody up. Because we knew our industry was headed towards a nosedive. And I answered first. I'm like, I'm in. And I had watched his this yappy hour that he'd been doing with his cousin and his wife and everybody. And it was fun. So I was just like, I want to be a part of that. And now here I am, co-executive producer of this sprawling network that we've created.
I love it. Yeah, Patrick, you mentioned, time is an illusion. Obviously, for about the past year or so, there's been no truer statement. I don't think it really exists. It's a flat circle. I miss going to things and doing things. But, as someone who created was part of creating kind of what I like to call a pandemic project, was that kind of the whole inspiration here was, hey, we're at home. I don't want to break bread. I want to do my own internet TV show. Yeah,
it happened very organically. I had a few, after the lockdown happened, and I was pretty. And he made it. I started live streaming. It started off with just like my iPhone propped up like on a broom handle off my phone onto Facebook, and the original yappy hours that he's referring to, they're still live and they're really silly. Were very, very simple. And then a little bit into it, someone said, hey, you need to look into this software called StreamYard. And so I was like, okay, great. Yeah, I'll do that. And I learned StreamYard, the software. And if you want my promo code, folks, I'll give it to you. Then I was live producing the show and doing it. And then we did it daily. And it was an 1.5-hour live stream every day. We had set themes and it was a lot of work. And I realized that I was dedicating like 2 to 3 hours a day of my time to it because I didn't have my commute and everyone was kind of getting adjusted and kind of freaking out about working from home. So I had time to do it. And I kept having interventions from my wife and my a really good friend. And I actually got a producer for the show. And they're like, yeah, I think we really need to like not do this anymore because it's a lot of time, a lot of effort. And in that time, I just tweeted out, like, I think I could do a live stream and start connecting with the themed entertainment community. Would anybody watch that? Would anyone want to be involved in that? And as Andy said, that goes down in history. He said, I would absolutely like to do that. Let's get going on it. And so those first few episodes, it was myself and Andy, and I'm on the show while I'm puppeting on the back, like the strings of producing it. And so that was going really great. And then on top of that, I had so I got to backtrack a little bit. And yes, Andy, I'm going to monologue here. I graduated in the year 2009, which was very devastating for the themed entertainment community. And I was trying to get a job. There were no jobs. And so I saw that there were people who were graduating college and had no hope, didn't know what was going on. Their internships were being canceled. And so I did another one of my, famous LinkedIns and said, hey, like, it was almost like a comment that of like, would anybody be interested in content developed for students? And Kelly Bailey said, I would absolutely love to be on that whatever that is. I want to be a part of it. And I was having a one-on-one with her talking about it, like, hey, what is this? What can it be? I've already done these other things. Let's make it work. And Dave Hall, I happened to have a meet and greet with Dave Hall right after that. And he just kind of jumped into the Zoom call, or maybe in Blue Jeans, whatever the thing was. And we're like, hey, we're talking about a show that's helping this. Like, if you want to hang out or if you want to be a part of this, that's great. Like, that's totally random, but that's how we got involved in it. And so had these two shows going on that were kind of separate, and posted on LinkedIn a message about how people can like help. And that was like 10 things you can do to kind of stay involved and like volunteer to help the people who are already doing cool stuff. That's when Rachel sent me a message. And I believe, I don't know how Rachel and I connected, but we had already had a meet and greet, virtual meet and greet about the industry. And Rachel reached out and said, hey, I want to volunteer. And I'm like, great, because we could really use a producer for these things. So in short order, Rachel, I trained, and Rachel, who's a godsend because it's very complicated to be hosting a show live and doing the technical direction of it. And that's kind of that's like pre-TETV, but the live streams that were formed that led to it. And this was in March/April of 2020. I think maybe Aprilish. I really don't know. I should have looked at that.
Gotcha.
I'm still blissfully unaware how any of that works, by the way.
Yeah, he's let to do it. He's let to log in on that side.
No idea.
You just show up and you're happy to be there.
Yep, exactly.
And Rachel, I got to ask you, because I was doing a little research before we came on this podcast. You went to Carnegie Mellon and you created your own major that was like this whole mess of just kind of seemingly unrelated things that you've somehow made cohesive. Can you talk a little bit about, not to go back and like say what you did in college, but the idea of creating your own major and like how it's kind of helped you, I guess, assimilate into this role, but also your other roles in like big.
Yeah. I was actually, I was pretty into I started out as a bio major, to be clear. But I did that because I thought I could help people. And then I realized that I cared a lot more about how people would experience spaces. And that became a really core tenet of what I wanted to achieve. And that major didn't really exist there. Like, you had a design major, but I wanted to do more technical stuff since I had computer science experience. And I was, at the time, I was interning as a software engineering intern at a lot of these big tech companies. But that was too, you were very isolated and it didn't feel like you were making connections.
Right.
But I found that the thing that I was best at was being able to translate things from like the designers to the programmers and making sure, when the designers say like XYZ doesn't work, sometimes that doesn't make sense to the programmers or the engineers, and wanting to make sure, okay, what's our game plan before we like attempt this larger project or larger goal, and making sure everybody sort of understands in their own preferred language, so to speak, what that means for them. And I found that making projects through that way felt really, really fulfilling and really enjoyable. And I was just taking classes that I felt looked like they integrated the two much better, because there were a lot of, strictly design classes or strictly computer science classes. But there wasn't as much in the area of integration. So those were the ones that I really went toward. Doing the themed entertainment course was it was a guest experience in themed entertainment design course. And I guess I had never cognizantly thought about the idea that one could be a themed experience designer, that somebody has to be the one designing these. But it sounded like a really good marriage of the technical that I had already done a lot of, but making it more compelling and more exciting for an audience. And, in a way that was more physical and more architectural than just user experience on like a program on your phone or an app or anything like that. So it was a bumpy road. I was a lot of figuring things out as I went along, like trying different classes to seeing what I thought was meaningful.
Well, kind of on that same line, kind of figuring things out as you went along. Patrick and Andy, I know you guys started with the Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Show, which, if I could just go ahead and compliment you on such a very creative show title. But since that happened, back in April, you guys have grown. I mean, they're right now on Themed Experience TV. There are, as of this recording, there are 7 shows. There's the Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Show. There's Harriet B's Daughters, Getting Real with Wendy and Cynthia, So You're About to Graduate College. There's a show from the Slice Creative Network. There's Unsung Heroes, and then there's a bunch of TETV specials that you guys have done. I hate using the phrase talk about, but can you tell us a little bit about the programming on TETV?
We, and maybe let's talk about, maybe we can dial it back and say, why did we create TETV? Which I think which is kind of an interesting story, which can lead to the programming. So let's go back to the beginning, then to the middle, and then the end, and then the back to the middle again. I turned to Andy and I said, this is what we're doing here is really cool. At the time, and this was summer of last year, and I said, we have a show that's focused on helping college students or young professionals who want to know more about the industry. And at that point, the show had kind of evolved to just showcasing different companies and what they do. Because when I was graduating, I had no idea that there were hundreds of companies out there that supported the industry. Everyone knows the Universals and Disneys, and of course Six Flags and Cedar Point. But you may have no clue that like Sally Dark Rides built Justice League for Six Flags, or you may have no idea about. And people know, the different coaster names and the different manufacturers, but there are full-fledged design firms that do very quality work that are hired by the Universals and the Disneys of the world and the Warner Brothers of the world to do these things. And I had no idea about that when I graduated. And so I wanted to expand. And I knew we had our Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Show, which was a lockdown show. And I said, Andy, I think this can be a network. Like I have a YouTube, but like it just seems a little rinky-dinky. It's on my personal YouTube channel. Let's turn this into something like Themed Experience. I don't even know how the name came up. We know the format of how to do it. Rachel was an all-star producer for us. Let's go ahead and kind of franchise this and build a team that's willing to make this into its own entity. And so we had already we already had platforms for discussing interesting things. And basically, we wanted to have a very diverse set of programming. So the shows we have are really awesome. So in my head, I said, I'd always love to contribute and work with Slice Creative Network, which is Melody Matheny, who I got my first kind of like real job based on an event that she had put on. And then Harriet B's Daughters is known in the industry for helping out women in the industry. And we wanted to get that on our network as well. And then we have Getting Real with Cynthia and Wendy, which was kind of spawned off of an episode we had on So You're About to Graduate College, which talked about gender equality in the industry. And then we have a lot of other shows that I couldn't even tell you because there's too many of them. But really what we are is having conversations within our industry that are just not happening for whatever reason. So our platform is very open, and we're okay to say things that maybe you normally would not hear in a press release or in a normal discussion, because I think it's important that we have those discussions.
I feel like my role at TETV, I'm very grateful that Patrick, entrusted me to join him on this endeavor. And I feel like, sort of like my role is like sort of the Roy to his Walt, if you will, if people sort of understand that reference to Walt Disney's brother Roy, sort of just like, was a facilitator. And I feel like, and an advisor, I don't want to say like reining in the ideas, but like sort of just like trying to help, activate them. But I mean, that, and I do some of the media and the music for the shows and the titles and things like that. But I mean, I just we have this thing that we call the Klingiverse. That is sort of the way that people get sort of like caught in the gravitational pull of Patrick Kling and how they end up a part of TETV and part of this whole thing. And it's just it's kind of an amazing thing to watch. And I'm certainly one of those people that get caught into it as well. I think the thing I love about TETV is I enjoy learning from all of our guests and our hosts and all of our volunteers. Every single one of our volunteers has something amazing to offer. I'm constantly inspired and learning from them and everybody else. And that's what I get out of the whole thing.
I will say the Klingiverse, Patrick, I started following you towards the end of the American Dream construction was getting ready to open. And obviously had followed you on social media. So yes, the Klingiverse is very much how this podcast interview came to be. So Andy, I totally get what you're saying there. But Patrick, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, Andy's really short selling, his involvement with the network. There are so many aspects of that Andy brings to the table. While sometimes I go a little rogue, every single thing we talk about, and he's a great balance and has a lot of production experience, which is really going to be important for our future content, because I have limitations. I know how to bring people together to have conversations, and I'm not afraid to have difficult conversations or conversations I think need to be had. But I mean, I will say, Andy, you bring a lot to everything, and it's a partnership. We're texting each other at midnight. He's on the East West. We're on different parts of the country, but it's really it's a really great collaboration.
I appreciate that. And I do think of it as a partnership, and it's true, but I'm just very grateful to be a part of it, and that sort of like, I feel honored to, contribute what I can. I also don't want to understate Rachel's role in all this too, because she was there sort of at the very beginning and was our first producer and now our senior producer. And like, I don't think TETV would have happened without her. That's for sure.
Thank you, Andy. Oh, and
there's Cynthia Sharpe.
We've been joined mid-podcast by Cynthia Sharpe. Cynthia, how are you?
I'm great.
Just busting in like the Kool-Aid lady.
I am totally busting in like the Kool-Aid lady.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna circle back real quick, just because we've done intros, and Cynthia, I'm going to get you involved in the conversation as well. But for those listening to the podcast, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your career?
Sure. I am an object lesson in don't follow my path. To anybody interested in getting into the themed experience world. I actually started out life following the educational path of a research scientist. I'm a human geneticist by training. And I ran screaming from academia. And it just so happened that the university I ran screaming from is in the same neighborhood as the largest science and technology center in the Western Hemisphere. So it's like, I'm going to get a museum job. And started out working at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. Worked there for 7 years in a variety of capacities. Exhibit development, which is their equivalent of a creative director, project management, education manager, all kinds of stuff. And when had to move for personal reasons out of Chicago, started freelancing and getting a wider variety of clients in the themed experience, location-based entertainment world, and wound up joining an experience design firm that's located out in California, but I have never lived in Los Angeles or Anaheim. I am not in Orlando. I'm not in the beating heart of the theme park world. I'm in the middle of the country. And I've telecommuted to them for 17 and a half years at this point.
Wow. So you've been on the whole telecommuting thing long before it was necessary for the entire world to do it.
Absolutely. Welcome to my world, y'all. I'm so terribly sorry that you now know the joys and sorrows of being on 10 Zoom meetings in a day.
That's all good. Right as you were joining us, Patrick, Rachel, and Andy were kind of discussing some of the show options on TETV. And I know you've got one of your shows is Getting Real with Wendy and Cynthia. Mm-hmm. And just for those listening, can you give us a kind of a brief synopsis of, Patrick touched on it, that it was kind of a spinoff. It was a spinoff of a So You're About to Graduate College episode, and kind of developed into its own show. Can you talk a little bit about that development?
So we had a couple of roads merge there. One of the wonderful things about the So You're About to Graduate College episodes has been having these real, honest, unvarnished, ask the ugly questions kind of conversations. The things that people tend not to talk about in polite company, or who we feel, we don't feel comfortable discussing in the workplace. And it came about not only because of that, but also Wendy Hyman Nunes, who is a lawyer in themed entertainment, won the Peter Chernak Distinguished Service Award from the TEA. She won that THEA 2 THEA cycles ago. And in the case study interview, in the digital case studies this past summer, during her interview, she spoke very, very frankly and candidly about the impact of losing her daughter before birth. She had a significant pregnancy loss. The impact of that on her career, on her job at the time, what a toll infertility treatment had taken on her. And as she was sharing this so candidly and frankly, the chat window in the case study just exploded with person after person saying, I've never heard anybody talk about this so candidly. I thought I was the only one who dealt with this. I wish we talked about this stuff more openly, more frequently. And Wendy and I got into a conversation of, you want to do a podcast? And we very quickly had the realization of neither of us had the time and bandwidth to do a podcast. And then Patrick sidled up to me and was like, hey, so do you want to, on TETV, would you like, we're like, somebody else deals with all the back end stuff? Yes, please. We are all in. And so the Getting Real with Wendy and Cynthia, we are hitting a bunch of topics which deeply affect what life is like in the workplace, but that tend not to get talked about. We're there to demystify and make it okay to talk about these things.
Patrick, you haven't offered me the chance to move the Coaster101 podcast to TETV and have somebody edit it for me. Can you, if you want to ask me that later, we can talk about it.
We haven't gone into podcasting yet, but I'm sure it's on the horizon. Yeah. This wasn't your question, but we have over 30 professional volunteers that are a part of this network. And to me, that's kind of insane. I'm like, Cynthia's always like texting me on the side, like, you've started a company here. And I'm like, right, but we don't make any money. No. So it's like, no. It's really quite a remarkable thing of how many people are willing to step forward and volunteer and be a part of something that I believe is making a difference in our industry, and having those tough conversations and all that. And while I'd love to offer you resources to do that, I think that you already have a solid system. You already have these we have the technology. The technology we're using right now to record is pretty impressive. But yeah, no, I appreciate that.
We've had conversations about why we haven't done podcasts yet, and why. And, we've talked about releasing the audio for all of our shows as podcasts. And I think the reason that we landed on was that nobody's commuting anymore yet. So that that's when a lot of people listen to podcasts, is when they're either on the train or in their car or bus or however they commute to their jobs. That's just not part of life again yet. So we figured it wasn't worth the trouble, if we're already releasing this visual medium.
Not to say that this podcast is not extremely worthwhile.
Of course.
Just to be clear.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, for our mission.
I will say, I believe that Andy, I will say, a person in the industry said, "Hey, I'm going for a run right now. I'd love to hear your and Andy's episode, but I don't know how to use YouTube at the same time." And I said, "Oh, well, just download the TETV app." And then, we don't have a TETV app. But I think that we want people to just get this information. And some of our shows make it for conversation, but some of our future shows really are not going to be – that I may not work very well in a podcast form. So we'll see what happens.
Well, you address the elephant in the room. I mean, I know you're not allowed – you don't want to talk – you don't want to let the cat all the way out of the bag, but you mentioned some of these future shows. What do you guys have in the works at TETV?
Well, as we develop the network, we're doing a lot of mostly, the StreamYard roundtable shows right now, even with our specials, which both of which have been really, really great. I've really enjoyed those. I think the development of the network is going to be, we have a few more roundtable shows coming up. One of them is an immersive theater show, immersive experiences. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, mixing realities and things like that. And then we also have, a show focused on operations of attractions and things like that, and theme parks and amusement parks and museums and zoos and as many LBE things as we can cram in there. And then I think that the development of the network later this year is going to start looking more like something you would see on like a Discovery Channel or a BBC4 kind of style, single camera documentary style reality shows, perhaps a competition reality show as well. We have some things in pre-production that I think are really, really exciting and are going to be a real departure from our current format.
And one other show that we've launched is called the Big Break Foundation, and that's a show all about diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion in our industry. And so we're really excited that that's launched. That's part of a nonprofit organization that I'm a part of. That's going to just focus on those issues.
Obviously, again, this network has grown from live streaming to, a full-blown online, as Cynthia said, a company. The reception from the audience, and, have people started reaching out to the four of you to get involved in some way?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I think we've had a pretty overwhelming response from the industry at large. I think we're our best when we are talking about issues that have never been discussed out in the open and have been buried for whatever reason. I field calls all the time from people that are like, "This is amazing. I want to come on." We have companies reaching out and all that. And I think it's really fantastic. And I think what's the most important thing is that after the pandemic happened, all these organizations like IAPA, TEA, et cetera, had to flip their programming about what are they going to do? How do they do a conference virtually? And everyone has their own little sandbox. And I think we're in let's have some serious discussions. Let's have some lighthearted discussions. Let's amplify voices and have it completely open to anybody, anywhere, at any time. You don't have to know what the TEA is. You don't have to know what anything is. And you can access this. I had a friend he was just like staying with me for a little period of time. And he watched our show that was all about oceaneering. And that's a company that's built so many rides that they're never allowed to say what they've worked on, but so many attractions in the industry for ride systems, for the vehicle that you're going around that moves and jostles you in really fun ways. And he said to me, like, I never knew that there were so many companies. And for whatever reason, it inspired him to go and sign up for a course to learn programming. Because he's like, you're doing this cool thing. This is a cool company, and you're programming. And so it's really quite remarkable that we're inspiring people. And I'm very proud of that's what's happening.
Well, Rachel, you went from audience member to volunteer. What was your motivation to get involved as a member of the viewing public?
Yeah, I think so. My experience with TEA before pandemic quarantine happened was I would try to psych myself up to go to these events, which were really big packed rooms of people much older than me who all knew each other and I didn't know them, and I would just stand there and trying to make conversation or trying to and a lot of the times people aren't super enthusiastic about talking to you, so they're it was kind of like oh, what do you do? And they're they say, oh, I worked on this thing, and I was kind of like, well, I'm a young professional interested in the industry, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing? And so, maybe you're just talking to different kinds of people who don't really vocalize this as much or talk about it more in depth. So getting information from, at these kind of events was very difficult to get a greater sense of what companies are even in this industry. Like, I don't know, I wasn't a theme park person necessarily who knew every name of every company that existed in the themed entertainment industry growing up, mostly because I didn't even know this was an option. And so trying to understand what people mean, since it's such a small industry where everybody knows each other. Oh, I know this company, or you get a general feel of what the connotation of what this company means in this industry. That hadn't been something that I could, for all the books that I got recommended periodically from different people in the industry, that just wasn't something that was written down in a book or something easily accessible that you could find on LinkedIn. And so watching the show, it opened my eyes up to, oh, here's what these people at these different companies do, and here's what they're like and what they sound like when they're talking to you, and what kind of questions they're fielding. That it doesn't make it so out of reach that I it's on some level, rocket science level, that I can't understand it. It's more approachable, and here's some of the projects that we've done, and here's here's an explanation of some of the sticking points we had that are just sticking points like any other project, where things never look the way they're supposed to, or they never go the way they're supposed to, and we pull crazy like late nights or frantic emails and texting that's going on, and sort of revealing that not every project that comes out beautifully polished looking is actually that polished behind the scenes. I think that was very meaningful to me to finally see some representation of that.
Perfect. And kind of on the flip side, I mean, Cynthia, you're we had Dave Cobb on the podcast recently, and I used the term seasoned industry veteran to refer to Dave. But as someone who is an industry veteran, what was your motivation to joining? I mean, obviously, again, we're all in the Klingiverse here, and so you've been pulled in by the gravitational pull. But why were you sold on kind of joining up with TETV?
As Rachel, Andy, and Patrick can attest, I am deeply, deeply invested in changing our industry, in moving the needle on equity and inclusion. And I am privileged beyond the telling and fortunate that I have been with a company for as long as I have that has supported my professional development and has paid for me to go to all of those conferences with all of those packed full of people, onslaught of humanity rooms that Rachel alluded to. And that's not equitable. I got into this industry in large part because I could afford to take a poorly paying, not above poverty line, entry-level job at one of the largest museums in the U.S. because my dad had died and my mom could hand me some of the life insurance money so I could pay rent. Not everybody is that fortunate. Not everybody has a parent who can write a checkbook to allow you to take the job that opens the doors. And so anything I can do to help break down barriers to access, barriers to information, barriers to the what it really takes to make contacts and to start building those relationships, so that when the industry does pick up again, because it will, that it is no longer so inequitable who's coming in the door and who's got a seat at the table.
Well, in line with that, today, March is Women's History Month, and on our network, we have content that's completely related to that. Andy and I actually we are giving up our Monday night slot to have discussions regarding that. So the only reason why I built this whole pirate ship is that I want to change our industry, and I want to have discussions, and I want to bridge these gaps, and I want people to know this information. So happy Women's History Month, first off. And we've just come off of Black History Month, which is absolutely fantastic. You got to go back and watch our content for that, because we celebrated Black voices in our industry, and we also did it in a thoughtful way. We had a Black History Month committee, just like Women's History Month. We have a committee for that as well, and figuring out how do we celebrate these voices now, but also all year long, which we do that. We have these conversations because we think it's important. If I was going to start a network and just like talk about nothing and say, hey, our industry is perfectly fine, that'd be like the biggest waste of time. It's not. I want to change the industry, and I'm really grateful to have people that are like-minded, like Andy, Rachel, and Cynthia, that are willing to do the work, participate, and really lead the charge. And this may be shocking to people who are listening to this podcast that never hear this perspective, but there is work to do, and with that, and we're happy to be doing it. I am, at least.
Well, both on our shows and behind the scenes at TETV, I think one of the tenets of our whole operation is radical inclusivity and equity. Our volunteers and our hosts and our guests are all from across the spectrum of BIPOC and LGBTQIA people, and I think we're certainly richer and better for it. I can't even imagine what TETV would look like without all of the incredibly diverse people that we have involved with the whole thing. And I think Patrick always says that the better things come from diversity, and I firmly agree with that and support that. And I think that that's one of the best things about TETV.
I completely agree. One question I've got for the four of you. What's been the biggest surprise for you so far in creating TETV, be it if it's an audience, you're shocked you're reaching a certain person or a certain group of people, or, what's basically been the biggest surprise in the past year plus for you guys?
Yeah, so I think the biggest surprise for me, before I started producing at the time I was producing Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Show, as well as the So You're About to Graduate Friday show. And the biggest question I had for myself was, am I qualified to be in this industry? Do I have what it takes to be in this industry? Especially, I didn't see other people who looked like me. I didn't see young Asian women who were in positions of power. I didn't even see them in entry-level positions. And so I didn't know if the industry was even open to having me. That's part of why I kind of stayed in tech for so long, was because, I'm not saying there's perfect gender equality there, but there were more people who looked like me. And, there was more public awareness of the poor gender equality problems in tech. So due to, for PR's sake, a lot of companies were working on it. So I just really didn't know anybody who was like me in that having X amount of experience and isn't been in the industry for decades on decades. And I had heard a lot of stories of other TEA people who were like, yeah, I met some guy who told me to meet him at a swamp in Florida. And then I was the head director of Walt Disney World. And, that I was like, okay, well, how do I get to that swamp? What do I have to do to meet people in this swamp? And I think the biggest awareness, the surprising thing I was given with this role was that I was much more capable of being in this industry than I previously considered. That, I thought maybe you had to grow up really loving and understanding every intricacy of every roller coaster and theme park to be a true fan. That's just not the case. I think I wished more there was more outreach. There's a lot of young women who I've met through various virtual events lately who feel similarly of, I'm not sure if this industry wants me or hears me. And being able to talk to each other about that and just have those fears validated, it made our struggles or made the thought processes and career decisions we were making more real and more, it's like a validation point so you feel a little less like you're going crazy and that what's happening is happening.
I think one of the biggest surprises to me, other than the amount of traction, like the conversations on Twitter can get pretty intense and weird and go down some amazing rabbit holes. But I think setting that aside, I think the biggest surprise for me has been I expected what we were talking about and the attitudes and openness and the willingness to engage with the hard stuff to resonate well with early career, newer into the field, more recently out of college or grad school or into the workforce age people. I have been deeply, deeply gratified by how intentionally people who are my peers career-wise in the industry are engaging with it, and folks who are in middle management and starting to reach for upper management. It is resonating in a way, the content that we're producing is resonating in a way that, quite frankly, I didn't see it resonate even just 3 years ago, much less 5 or 10 years ago. I have given plenty of talks in plenty of conferences that I found myself defending what I was saying at the hotel bar that night. And I'm not getting that kind of response when I open my mouth and lob grenades on TETV. There's been a real sea change, and there is an openness and a willingness to go, okay, yeah, this stuff might not all be as sunshine and roses as I thought it was, and I need to approach this differently. And I'm listening to and I'm engaging in these conversations. That's been really glorious to see. It's been really great.
And I just wanted to quickly add, if people haven't seen Cynthia's talks at these various conferences, that was the first time I had been exposed to I had heard Cynthia's name as like a legend that I didn't know. And seeing her talks at these conferences was the first time I felt like there was space for me in the industry. That even though I had been questioning whether or not I was allowed to be in the industry or even wanted really in the industry, at least there was one person who was willing to say it and get it out there and be the person who said, you are allowed to be in this industry. And not only that, I need other people who have been in this industry to examine themselves and check their privilege and really think deeply about the way that they're engaging with other people. Because, the way that they're conversing or engaging with other people could be the thing that shuts people out of the industry altogether if they're not getting a good reception. And so I think having more Cynthia, especially having more talks like that and making that more widely available and normalizing these talks instead of saying that it's just one person who believes this, there's actually a lot of people who believe this. And that was something that I loved but didn't expect the network to take.
Oh,
wow. That's like, I barely even know both of you, and I'm like getting emotional right now. This is really good.
I just miss hotel bars.
What is this thing you call I call a hotel bar.
I will say that Rachel, from a different perspective, I had the same view of being very inspired by Cynthia's Sate, so whatever that was, the flipping of the table. I watched that video during the very beginning of my journey, and I'm sure it's 2019, and it made me rethink everything. And there's definitely different power and different dynamics all around, but this stuff's complicated. And had it were not for that presentation, the Big Break Foundation would not exist. like you're a part of the Big Break Foundation and Heavy's Daughters and all that, which we've talked about a little bit on this podcast, we're on a podcast. But it's really, really remarkable. I want every single person to be a Cynthia Sharpe. Earlier today, I texted Cynthia about a situation because I didn't really know how to feel about it, and you were there to help out. We need to commoditize Cynthia Sharpe. We want everyone to be a Cynthia Sharpe, to be as evolved and as understanding of these sensitive issues. And I know this is a lot of inside baseball, but I want everyone to know who's listening to this podcast to know that the industry of amusement parks and theme parks are changing the way we do things. And we are leading, I don't want to say we're leading the charge, but we are trying to have these discussions and to make experiences welcome for all, and to the people who are telling those stories to be reflected by the audiences we serve. And it's really important. And Cynthia gives me goosebumps every time it's honored just to be working with Cynthia on anything. Really, it really is.
Oh man. Thanks, guys. And I need a lot more people to be as engaged and accessible as I am, because I need sleep. And
yeah,
I deal with only so many texts in a day.
Yeah, well, we're Big Break Foundation's going to change that. Hopefully, we'll have these resources. We'll have these questions and answers for those that are on the design side of things, and for those that enjoy theme parks and experiences. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear how we can make it better. Have you ever had a bad experience about a park? Has a park not been accessible and you wish it was? As designers, I want to hear that. I want to make it better. So, anyways, back to you in the studio, Andrew.
Awesome. I'm like, again, this has been really deep and insightful, and I love it. And it's typically heavier than what we do on this podcast, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, we warned you.
No. Well, back to me with a question that doesn't really mean anything. Patrick, what surprised you personally about this? This has kind of been, I don't want to call it your sole brainchild, but what surprised you?
It's actually overwhelming having over 30 professional volunteers a part of this project. It's one thing to text Andy and say, hey, we should start a network. Say, hey, and then it's like, well, what does that actually mean? And how does that actually work? But to have so many people that are willing to come together to try to change the industry in some way has been sincerely overwhelming. And it's kind of like, I don't know if we even know how to, now we're going to have a therapy session. I don't even know how to handle it, really. It's really quite remarkable just having so many people that are willing to come forward and be a part of something like this. And I'm really grateful to all the professional volunteers that are willing to do that. And it's really been overwhelming. And the response from the industry has been fantastic. And just, I look at the YouTube views and the Facebook views and the viewership that we have and the engagement we have is absolutely over the world. But I realize that we're in a very niche market too. And so just that there are so many people that want to step forward and donate 5 to 10 hours a week to this is really remarkable.
And I think I know the answer to this question, and this is going to be the last question I ask. But given what I know now, as the industry gets back to normal, are the plans to continue with TETV as a volunteer basis? You may or may not have as much time as the themed experience world kind of gets back to normal, but are plans to continue to make it bigger and better?
Yeah, I mean, as the network expands and the shows, I think are going to get to broader categories. Patrick and Cynthia and I, we all have sort of like full-time jobs, while we're working on all of this. For Patrick and me, it's quite like a part-time job to wrangle all this, throughout the week. But I can't imagine life without TETV anymore. It's sort of, what's funny is that the whole, so here's some inside information is the whole TETV experience for me is on Slack. We use Slack, the connectivity application, and like I never used it before. I mean, I that's not true. I used a little bit for the tech workshop series that I taught last year, but like it totally runs my life now. My whole life is run by Slack, and that's, I don't know. I really enjoy it, and like I already said, like in our chat, Patrick stole my response. As I think that I just am overwhelmed by all of our volunteers. I'm constantly amazed and inspired by all of them and their dedication, and it really, on some days, you don't want to get out of bed in the morning and go on another Zoom call, but they're there for us, and we're there for each other, and it's just amazing and wonderful.
Yeah, sorry, not to break the community feel of TETV, but I personally wouldn't be opposed to getting a job and in addition to having TETV going on, because I think it's opened up a lot of doors for me. But it is sort of, you're hoping to see more traction happen in the industry, just so that maybe you can make more content that you couldn't make back when we were in quarantine, and starting to get into more than just us live streaming from our computers, but something that integrates the digital and physical a little more, compelling way down the line. I think there's a lot of potential for that, and for more growth, instead of just strictly doing the same thing we were doing before, expanding that idea.
I personally would love to see some turnover in our volunteer corps, because they do get permanent full-time jobs and no longer have as much bandwidth to work on TETV. That would be great.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's almost like that dating app Hinge, the dating app that's meant to be deleted. I almost look at TETV as sort of like that. I hope that 3-6 months from now, all of the people that are volunteering for us now don't have time for it anymore, because they are fully employed in a career of their choosing. Awesome. As much as I love them.
Any final thoughts or anything else you would like our audience to know about TETV?
I will just say that I grew up being a person who was obsessed with theme parks and was on all the chat rooms, Jim Hill Media, Mice Chats, Mouse Planets, and totally enthralled in this industry. And to anybody listening to this, I say, we'd love to have you. Come to our network, watch our programming if you really want to hear what's going on within it. And if you want to be a part of TETV, come check us out. ThemedExperienceTV.com. We are more than happy to bring people into the fold. Everybody that is part of our network, it's all volunteer, all professional volunteers that are very passionate about the industry, and there is room for you in this industry. I will just, I don't want to be cheesy, but like, never give up. Like, if you can keep fighting, you'll get to where you want to go. And if you want to design roller coasters, you can get there. It is possible. And this industry is so remarkable and so fun. And, while my wife doesn't like me working 16-hour days, I don't know. I told her, like, I don't know if I could not put all the dedication into what I'm doing right now amongst TETV, Big Break Foundation, and my normal job. Like, I want our industry to transform, and we're looking for people who want to be allies, people that want to learn, people that want to just throw themselves into making change.
I think one of the most amazing and powerful things about TETV is the community. It is unlike any conference session where you have to hold your questions till the end and then line up at the microphone. And if you're lucky, they have time for you. One of the great things about TETV is that so much of our shows are dialogue, that it is not just the people on the screen engaged in deep, thoughtful, oftentimes raucous, sometimes silly conversation, but that we don't just have audience participation, we want it. We pull in your questions and we answer them live time, and we engage as much as possible with our viewers through the medium. In like going so far as there have been folks who have commented on Twitter threads and then have been guests on the show as a result of piping up. And so it's a real opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue in a way that not many industry platforms embrace. And so pick one of the shows, watch it, dive right on into the comments. We welcome your participation.
Well, Cynthia, you did mention Twitter. Patrick, you mentioned the website. Where can we find Themed Experience TV? I mean, I know you guys are on all the social media platforms, but where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, we can go round robin a little bit. If you type in Themed Experience TV on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, you'll find that we're like Themed EXP TV on all those channels. I'm also happy to have anybody follow me on Twitter. I do get political on Twitter, but that's fine. And I'm Patrick S. Kling. That's my handle. How about the rest of all of y'all? Andy, get that plug in.
Which the plug for the network?
No, for you. Your personal. If you want to connect with you.
Oh, yeah. No, it's okay. We'll keep it to TETV. I mean, just follow us on YouTube, subscribe, like us on Twitter and Facebook, and also don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. I think that's actually the best way to keep up with our burgeoning slate of content. It's all going to be announced on the newsletter first. That's the first place you'll hear it. Every Monday at noon, we send that out.
Cynthia, Rachel, how about you? How do people get a hold of you? Or not?
If Patrick is political on Twitter, I am positively incendiary. So
can confirm.
Sure, it's a good idea for me to say on the podcast that I'm Cyn Sharpe on Twitter, but there you have it.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's something I've felt slightly concerned about in this more digital landscape we find ourselves in, is that my personal Twitter is now also my professional Twitter, which, I kind of feel bad for the people who followed me expecting something a little, probably just strictly theme park focused, but if I've gone on a tirade about something specific that a brand has done that I feel is egregious, or, or just reaching out to friends and non-professional contacts. Now I guess the world's of immersion, I've kind of shrugged at it and said, if you're here, this is the whole part of me that you're going to get. So I'm Rachel _Nak, N-A-K, on Twitter. But, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn and most other places.
Rachel, you didn't have to change your Twitter handle away from Chicago Wench because the TVA and Blue Loop were linking you.
Yeah, you did that. That's funny. I remember that.
I'm gonna pop back in and plug my Instagram because I'm 4 away from 500 followers, and every day I'm on pins and needles. Who's gonna be the 500th? It's Pachinko Media on Instagram, PACHINKO Media, and my content is solid gold, so you won't regret it.
I'm looking at your Twitter. I'm looking at Instagram. It's an Emperor's New Groove. Our logo, you with a bunch of booze. All right, sorry. Anyways, go on. No,
I mean, I'm proud of my full bar here at the studio, and I wish you could all join me here for cocktails and conversation as soon as possible.
Oh my God.
We're going to have to fix so much of this in post.
And by we, it's me, but it's fine. But with all that being said, with the various social media plugs, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster101 podcast. Like Patrick said, you can find Themed Experience TV all over the internet. It's themedexperiencetv.com. You can find them on all the socials. You can also find us on all the socials. We are at Coaster101. We also have a website, believe it or not, in this day and age, where we write really good articles.
Nice. Good
being a relative term. Coaster101.com. Feel free to shoot us an email with questions, comments, concerns, fan mail, or hate mail to podcast@coaster101.com. Thanks, as always, to Justin Mabry of JM Music Design for our theme music. That'll do it for this week, and we will talk to you all again soon. See ya.
Thanks, everybody.